Wonderful, wonderful. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm very audible. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm very excited about this conversation today because, first of all, we have one of the best wedding planners in Kenya, and I'm so happy that you guys heeded to our call. We're so honored and so privileged to have you here, House of Daughty, Alfred and Dorothy. Thank you so very much.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And I think we are going to have a very good conversation and a very timely one. Because in the last few weeks, we have been speaking to brides and we have been going about all topics related to wedding planning process. So we started with, you just got engaged, what next? And then we covered everything from photography, stationery, we brought in entertainment, we brought in makeup. And so today we are talking about key wedding suppliers timeline. You see, perhaps the most important part of wedding planning is building your vendor team. That is hiring the group of professionals who will make your vision a reality. So I'm just thinking for the bride, and you're also asking yourself, what type of vendors do you actually need? So today, knowing when to start that conversation with your vendor, I think it's very essential, and I think it helps you manage the finer details of your day, and it keeps your celebration running smoothly. I just want to quickly introduce everyone before we get into our interview, and I'll start the introductions by introducing myself. My name is Eunice Moy. I am the founder of Ulita Surprise. Ulita Surprise is an events design and planning company here in Nairobi, based here in Nairobi. I feel very honored to be moderating this panel today. I'm a trained events planner, and I was trained by Samantha's Bridal. They have an academy, the best one in the country, called Wedding Members Business Academy. And I always say, if anyone is looking into going that direction of becoming an event planner, you have to be certified. And to be certified, you have to go for the best. So I'd really advise you to seek out WMBA. Now I'd like to introduce a wonderful panel, starting with House of Daughty. House of Daughty is a team of husband and wife, wedding and event coordinators, and House of Daughty is founded on loyalty, dedication, and unparalleled customer service. It was established in 2010 and was designed to help clients orchestrate their perfect event. House of Daughty has a team of 8 coordinators, and they're known for their incredible attention to detail and highly organized and proactive approach to planning, coupled with unparalleled creativity and professionalism. House of Daughty's mission is to consistently produce quality results, exceeding all expectations all the time. It is led by Alfred and Dorothy Kimueli, who started the company after their wedding 14 years ago. And at this point, I'd just like to invite Alfred and Dorothy to just say a few, hello, we get to hear your voice before we proceed.
Good evening, people. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It is an absolute pleasure to be here to share our thoughts on a few of our thoughts about what's going on in the industry and everything. My name is Dorothy Kimueli. I am a director at House of Daughty. We do wedding and events planning, and of course, it was introduced by Eunice before. Of course, I work with my husband and my life partner, Alfred, who is going to introduce himself next, but I'm also a mother of 2 beautiful daughters.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Alfred?
All right. Good evening, everyone. Alfred is my name. So it's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be part of this panel. We do not take it for granted. And I think my boss, I like calling now my boss, both at home and at home.
Yes.
I think has done the info. But basically for us, we are partners. And one of the questions we always have is why House of Daughty? I also like saying she is the Daughty in the house. So the company is named after Dorothy, but we work together. So it's a pleasure to be here and also just to share our experiences in the wedding industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before I introduce Brenda, I'd like to give a shout out to participants joining here and on YouTube. And I'd like to welcome those who are joining us. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box. Feel free to make this very conversational. I'm seeing Isaac Warambo. I'm seeing DJ Stretch. He's saying he's in the building. DJ Stretch was the DJ to your wedding, is it not? Is that not right?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us, DJ Stretch. And so, yes, our participants, feel free to introduce yourself on the chat box. And even as the conversation goes on, feel free to add any questions that you might have. And our wonderful panel here will surely answer any questions towards the end of the webinar. Now, I'd like to introduce Brenda Nkirote. Brenda, I hope I got that name right, Nkirote. It's a beautiful name.
Thank you. Thank you.
Brenda is a former bride who got married in October of 2019. She experienced firsthand House of Daughty's expertise, and she's here to share her experience working with professional wedding planners, who she entrusted with her big day. She'll be sharing her experience working with House of Daughty, and she'll also be sharing some tips for brides who are currently or in the future shopping for a wedding planner. And I think without further ado, we'll begin the interview. So today we are talking about key wedding suppliers. And we said wedding suppliers are the professionals that you hire to bring out your, to take your vision, your wedding's vision into reality. So the first question for Alfred, I'd like to ask, in Kenya, what is the average number of vendors a couple hires in any given wedding? Just any given wedding, what's the average number of vendors someone would hire?
Okay, thank you, Eunice. I think I would say between 15 and 20.
15 and 20?
Yes, and I'll explain why. Okay. So when you think about your wedding end to end, a vendor is somebody who you must have for your wedding. And it's not necessarily people who you have to pay, but it's anyone who has to be there for the wedding to happen. And for us, we split vendors into two. There are those personal vendors. And personal vendors are vendors who the couple must consult directly with or without a wedding planner. We're talking about personal stuff, like wedding rings. We're talking about the church. We're talking about the legal aspect of it, that Sharia house. All those are personal aspects of it. And then we have the other vendors who people like us come in and help. Yeah. And on top of the list is people like wedding planners, a venue, a caterer, photography, videography, and the list goes on and on. But at least ideally 15 to 20 suppliers, depending on the kind of wedding you have and you're looking at.
Okay, and I think it's not limited to 20. I think it could go on and on and on.
It goes on, depends on your wedding. You know, depending on the kind of wedding you're looking at and your vision and your views for the wedding. So it goes, the list is endless.
Wow, so that's 15 to 20. And even before we delve deeper into the conversation, I think we should begin with the basics. These 15 to 20, they are the key wedding suppliers. But I'd just quickly like you to mention who they are and why they are important.
Okay. So the key wedding suppliers, to me, will depend on the kind of wedding you want. Okay. And the first thing, even before we delve into it, is sitting down as a couple and deciding what are the most important things in our wedding. And for me, I think after you're engaged, I think one of the key suppliers to get is a wedding planner. I feel the wedding planner really brings in a lot of importance to the wedding in terms of just helping you select the other vendors that you need, because they'll bring in the expertise and they really, really help with that. But that's also depending on the kind of couple you are. Some couples are very organized and they want to bring in a wedding planner later on in the game after they've done their research, and that's okay. But in a nutshell, looking at just a run through of the different suppliers, of course, first of is an officiant, and this depends on the couple. You know, it could be a civil wedding, it could be a church wedding, Muslim wedding, whatever it is, somebody to officiate the wedding. Then based on that, you need to think about where's the wedding going to be, okay? And this is more of the ceremony. Is it inside a church? Is it inside a mosque? Whatever it will be. That's another vendor. And those two are very different, because you can have a partner and use a garden and all that. Then after that, you need to think about within the church, you know, what are the other vendors that you need to think about in the program? You know, if it's a ceremony that will require you to get a praise and worship team, a saxophonist and all that, those are categories within the ceremony aspect. But then on the broader spectrum, we have a venue, we have a decorator, we have tents and furniture and setup, which could always be part of the decor. We have catering, depending on what you choose for, because some venue will give you the catering. We have photographers, we have videographers, we have entertainment. Entertainment could be split into several categories. You have an MC, you have a DJ, you have a PA, you have a band, you have traditional dances, all that is inside there. Then you have the cake. Then you have cards and wedding stationery, you have bridal hair and makeup. Then you have security, depending on the venue and where it is. So the list goes on and on, but those ones are the crucial ones.
I was writing. That's like I'm looking kind of transport. Yes. Wow. I mean, if I was not a wedding planner, I would be like, wow. Wow, still. So Dorothy, we have had the list of key wedding suppliers, and it's quite a long list, and we have not even exhausted that list. But I'd like to focus on one key wedding supplier that is very important and is the reason why you are here. You are wedding planners. What would you say is the role of wedding planners when it comes to vendor selection and contracting? How do you then let me leave you to answer that question. How do you, when it comes to vendor selection and contracting, what is your role as wedding planners?
Okay, so first of all, as a wedding planner, you end up being like a best friend to the client. So first of all, they have to kind of trust you and believe that you have their backs, no matter what you're suggesting. Now, having said that, on the professional side, a wedding planner is a consultant, and this, you sit with the client at the beginning, with the bride, with the groom, sometimes with the extended family, depending on how much they want, the couple want to involve them, just to help sit back, talk about budget, determination, style, concept, and then based on that, we can then do research and find out who are the right vendors aligned with what the client wants. So back again to the style, concept, budgets, and each vendor, depending on the category, we try and match them with the right vendor based on that. After doing this, then we then help you design and put together your wedding together with the vendors we have picked, and then just make sure the legwork is out of your, we get the legwork from the client just to make sure it's easier. It's an easier process for them because we are there to help and guide. And then of course, that is prior. And then on the wedding day, it's just make sure the suppliers and vendors have delivered as per the contract and what we had agreed, and ensure everybody is where they're supposed to be as agreed. That is basically, I would say that's a simple way to determine what is the work of a wedding planner. In regards to
Yes.
Maybe I could chime in.
Yes, please. Please go ahead.
I think the other very important aspect is to make sure that the couple enjoy the wedding process as well. Not necessarily the wedding day alone, but the wedding process. We help you do that.
And I think that's very important because I've come across individuals who say that they would never go through the wedding planning process again. And it's quite unfortunate because I think a wedding is one of those very important occasions in your life. And it's just a given that you should enjoy it. And if there's a vendor out there like wedding planners who elevate that, the stress, I think wedding planners are one of the most important suppliers.
Absolutely.
True that.
Yes. But then just to continue to the next question, Dorothy. So we have gone through this list. It's quite a long list. Alfred is saying that for any given wedding, you'll work with, say, between 15 to 20 vendors. So I'm just wondering, who should you contact first? I mean, you have your vendor, you have your venue, you have your decorator, you have your officiator, you have so many people. Who should you contact first in order of urgency or time sensitivity? I'm just wondering, who should you contact first?
Okay, so there's what I like to say, there's no size fits all when it comes to who you should contact first. Reason being, there are clients who are very particular about specific vendors. And these vendors, for example, Eunice Mwe is a planner that they really, really love, and she can only take one wedding at a time. So based on that, maybe Eunice should be the first person they should contact. Other clients are very particular about the church they want to get married. Catholic churches are not that many in Nairobi. People may think they're that many, but within the sphere where people like doing weddings, they may not be that many. So if for you're particular about a certain church, a certain Catholic church, a certain Anglican church, probably if you already have the date booked down, the church should be the next one to pick. For example, photographer is a very important person. There are people who, what is important to them is just making sure they have the most beautiful photos. Decor and cake and those other things may not be that important to them, but the photographer is very important to them. So in that case, if Dorothy Kimueli works alone as Dorothy Kimueli photographer, that may be the first person we need to get in touch. Having said that, as a planner, there are those I feel things that should get out of the way. Obviously, venue, because of course, if you like a specific venue, if it goes, it goes. And maybe when we sat down and came up with style and concept and what kind of wedding you want, maybe we should first take care of the venue first. But again, I want to say there's nothing specific. We cannot say absolutely this is the most important person you should talk to, because sometimes each client has particular needs that we need to determine who should go first. Yeah.
Okay. That I think that answers a lot of questions, or a lot of questions that people who are planning weddings or just starting to would be wondering. There's so many people I need to get in touch with. Who should I? So you say it varies with couples, with weddings. Okay. But then I want us to be a bit practical, and I want us to take an example of a wedding scheduled in, say, December. It's the beginning of the year. We're in January. The wedding is in December. So when should a couple start contacting these suppliers? And I'd just like you to take, say, 5 or so key suppliers who you feel is quite very urgent or very important. When should they start contacting them?
So you're back to if it's January for December. So as House of Daughty, and I guess any planner usually gives their clients timelines, and that helps. So it could be 2 months timeline. So maybe January to March, maybe quarter or something, where you say January to March, we should have done this. April to June, we should have done this. So starting from January, I would say you've decided to get married. We of course contact your wedding planner where necessary. close the deal, and then we can start talking about style, concept, and everything. Because once we talk about style, concept, design, what exactly do you want for your wedding, we can easily determine, do we want our wedding in Mombasa? Do we want our wedding in Naivasha? Can our wedding work in Nairobi? Is it a garden ceremony? Is it a night wedding? Then based on that, then we can start, okay, we need to really seal down on the venue. We need to close down on the pastor. We need to close down, so the initial things are just to discuss generally. The first maybe 2-3 months is what kind of wedding you want, colors, what kind of entertainment are you looking at, what kind of food, if you like this venue, does it offer food, or then should we look for a caterer? The initial stages is just usually deciding concept, styles, even the bridal party determine on how many are you, what are your color schemes, because based on these discussions, then we can see in terms of importance what we should do first. As we move, of course, then we should, with the pastor, then who is a very important aspect, pastor or Kadi or whoever, depending on which denomination, which religion you are, then each of them have their different ways. So sometimes for Christians, pastors are one of the first people actually you should talk to, because then after that, they'll tell you now you need to do premarital counseling and those kinds of things, which are part of the year, because premarital counseling most of the time here is 10 weeks, 12 weeks program. So these are things we should talk about early. Honeymoon, what is your honeymoon thought? Because this is a budget that has to be put down, and even you can start doing your research as a couple, like we want to go to Santorini, what is the cost like? Right now there's COVID, is that even applicable? Are Europe countries allow people to travel? Then can we then start thinking about local travel and something like that, because that still makes part of the initial discussion. Then of course involve I would say we are in an African setting whereby we have to involve our families. Some people stay away from families, but sometimes if you don't involve them in the earlier stages, you'll be shocked when you are planning for 100 people and your mom brings you a guest list of 300 people and you've already planned down the budget. So involve the parents where necessary, or the families, or anyone who you feel is is somebody who needs to be involved in the wedding one way or another. Talk about the numbers. What is their expectations? If you tell them you want to do a wedding in Mombasa, are they going to buy that? If you tell them you want to take your wedding to Zanzibar, are they going to buy that? What are their thoughts on that? If you're planning a 50-pax wedding, what are their thoughts on that, and why are you planning? Let them shoot the questions right now, so that when we start now planning on venues, and you have their blessings, for lack of a better word. Of course, now as we move in the next maybe 3 months, we should now have started putting our vendors in place. Who is doing our decor? We've already picked a venue. So what's our decor like? Who's doing our food? Who's doing our entertainment? We've started talking to these people, getting quotes, getting styles and maybe mood boards and things like that to determine for us to determine that this is the actual vendor that we want to work with. As we move to the third quarter, have you paid? Of course, by then once you determine a vendor, you need to pay deposits after you sign contract. So after that, it takes a bit of a lull, because then now it's more paying deposits. We've determined most of these things. We are paying now deposits. We are just doing follow-ups on if there's somebody who was to check out something, we have already started doing it. Then now after that, we start thinking as we move ahead, we have a guest list now. These people need to be invited. Sorry. Actually now, because like as House of Daughty, we have a lot of diaspora clients. In the first quarter, if you decide a date, you should save the dates, so that now by the time we get to the third quarter of the year, now we are actually sending actual invite cards. If you're telling people how to dress up, you're telling them, and things like that. So the third quarter is more of now, meeting finalizing on our concepts, everything. Basically, on the third quarter, we shouldn't even be getting tired. It's just final things. The fourth quarter towards the wedding, then is where we go back to site visits. Invite all vendors necessary for site visits. If the planner needs to meet the family, this is the time whereby maybe your planner should meet your family, so that they just get to know you, and so that they are not feeling like, the family doesn't feel like who is this on the wedding day? No, sometimes I say, let's get to just know the most important people, just to meet them and know them, do mock setups, because sometimes we don't want to do the site visits and mock setups so early, people forget. And even sometimes people don't have, we need the decorators to have time to source for some of these things. So in the fourth quarter, which is like the last towards the wedding, that's when we're doing our mock setup, site visits. If the bridal party needs to fit into their outfits and make sure they fit well and all that, and then of course towards the last week is where we do things like NEMA licenses, because you can't get them too early. And even, sorry, I missed out on the fact that Sharia house, you can't also do it too early, which is a legal part. They say 21 working days. With COVID, things have changed a bit. I'll always say, let's maybe do 2 months to instead of the 21 working days, because with COVID, Sharia house are saying system-based, which is very slow, so now we probably need to do it a bit earlier. So maybe 2 months to the wedding, you're doing your Sharia house. Then the last month is when we're doing licenses like NEMA license where necessary, sitting down to actually agree on the programs, finalize on the work plans for the day, meet if possible the bridal party and talk to them a little bit, because they determine how the day runs. And then of course there's wedding rehearsals, and that comes towards the end of the week. Confirm transport logistics for the day, and of course have just talk to the bride and groom just to see if there's any bits of pieces that could have been added, or something that we hadn't talked about earlier that they feel now they need to add towards the wedding. Yeah, and of course the wedding day, then now just having the wedding and enjoying the wedding and leaving your wedding planner. Trust them that no matter what decision they make on the day, it's just for the good of the wedding.
Okay. I had a bit of internet issues when you beginning to answer that question, but correct me if I'm wrong. But you said that we should appear. Hello?
Yeah, you are breaking for a moment, Eunice.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
We can now, but we didn't hear your question. Do you mind repeating it, please?
I'm the one who is frozen. I'm wondering what is happening because I'm using Safaricom. I actually switched to my bundles because I thought the bundles were better than the Wi-Fi.
Now you're better.
But so sorry for that. But I was saying, sorry?
You're okay.
You're okay now, Eunice.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm so sorry for that internet issues. Yes, I had a bit of internet connectivity problem, but correct me if I'm wrong, but you said for that question that I was asking, when should you when should you start contacting the vendors for a December wedding, considering it is January? And you said that we should divide the year into quarters. So different quarters have different sort of vendors to look into. I don't know if
Sorry,
point where my internet was bad, but Janet Ondieki from the chat box, she asked, how as we go on to the next question.
Eunice, unfortunately, we did not. But now we can.
Now we can.
Now you're okay.
I think I need to switch back to Wi-Fi. This bundles thing is just letting me down, but I thought it was the best one.
Okay.
Now you are okay.
We're losing you when it's most important when you're asking the question, unfortunately.
Shoot it again.
You can
I'm wondering what is wrong. If he does this the next time, I'll just switch back to Wi-Fi.
Okay.
It has done that. Okay.
Could it be from our end? Because I doubt.
No, it's Uni. I think she can just switch back to Wi-Fi.
Yeah, because I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. They will give us some time to come back.
Let me write her up. Let me chat her.
Please do. Trust me.
Hello?
We can hear
Can
you
you
now.
hear me?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can hear you now, Eunice. Welcome
Just
back.
switch back to the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Bundles is not
Welcome back.
working. Yes, thank you. But I was saying, before I had these internet issues, and I might not have had your answer, but Janet from the chat box was asking about how soon should one engage a wedding planner? Please give a time frame. Is it 1 year? Is it 6 months?
Okay. I think I'll take that. And for me, I
Okay.
like, I think you should engage the wedding planner the second day after you get engaged. Yes. I feel a wedding planner is such a crucial aspect of your wedding, and they will really help a lot. What we like saying is we'd rather plan the wedding in such a way that 6 months of the wedding, you're done with everything. You're just thinking about, oh my God, is there anything happening? And a wedding planner really helps in that process, because one of the things that they do, like Dorothy was talking about, is in the level of consultants in the initial stages, a wedding planner is able to use their expertise and narrow down your options. You're always bombarded with so much information, especially the current bride. And if you're not careful, there'll be too many decisions to be made. It can be very confusing. But once you start consulting with somebody who understands it, somebody who knows it, they help you bring your vision together, narrow it down. And sometimes, like saying, in the initial stages, you may not necessarily know what exactly you want, but at least you know what you do not want. And that really helps in the process. And as wedding planners, as professionals, we're able to help in that process such that from there on, a lot of your legwork is removed. Remember also, wedding planners have a lot of networks. So you could be wanting to contact a particular supplier who's well known to the wedding planner. So if you come to me as a wedding planner, I cut that for you. I'm able to call Eunice directly and say, hey, look, we have a wedding coming up and all those. So I feel immediately you get engaged, the next step should be to get a wedding planner. They will always make your work easier after that.
And Eunice, maybe I can add, there is no time frame for planning your wedding. I like to say decision making makes everything easier. We've planned weddings less than a month because the client was very quick in decision making. They decided they're getting married on this day, and it was within, I think, 3 weeks.
Yes,
is our shortest time we've planned a wedding. So it's just decision making that determines how fast things move. So you could have 1 year, but it takes too long to change. You keep changing things, up to the last minute. We still don't have vendors. So also the decision-making process makes things easier for a client.
And I'd like to echo that point, decision-making, because I've also planned a wedding in 1 week, funny enough. Yeah. But now Brenda, I think, has been very quiet, and we want to bring her in. Brenda, we are talking about getting in touch with your supplier, and we want to ask you, when did you start conversations with your supplier, and in this case, your wedding planner? But before that, before we get into all that, I think you're a very important person in this panel. You're a former bride. You have gone through this process, and it's only fair to ask you about yourself and your wedding and your spouse, your love story. And I think we're going to see a few photos from your wedding, just so that we can get a visual of what you're talking about. We can get to see, House of Daughty's work in visual representation. In action. So that you're just not talking.
Visually,
But I think before you start answering any questions, maybe just tell us about your love story. Where did you guys meet?
Okay.
Was there a proposal? How was the proposal?
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
You're in the lab. Yeah. Yeah.
As actually see my husband online. He's Brian Kelda. So we met back in 2013. Um, yeah, but then both of us were in relationships, so we're just actually lying in the sidelines. But in 2015 we got serious with each other, and then in 2016 he asked me out to be his girlfriend. So we did. So all this time he was in South Africa, so we've been doing long distance for 7 years or thereabout, or both friendship. So 7 is both friendship and courtship. We only got back together last year, 2020. Yeah, in July. That's when now we started a normal relationship. So he asked me out in 2016, 4th of May. May the 4th be with you. So, and then we took roughly 3 years or 4 years thereabout of dating. And then mine was not your normal traditional engagement and then wedding. Mine was first the traditional engagement, where he took me home first, came home to my parents, started the processes, the marriage traditions, and then that's when he asked me out. I was actually trying to see if I could share, because my engagement is on YouTube, but I can't seem to get it. But it was really lovely. It was at Lord Errol's. Yeah. Anyway, he got everyone involved. He got my family involved. He got he got really everyone. His family, my family, they were all involved in it. And it wasn't, no, we just had dinner, the two of us, but he did like a video clip of everyone saying something. It was very emotional. But yeah, so yeah, then I got married in 2019 October, 12th October 2019. Yeah, I think that's just a summary of our love story. Yeah.
I mean, I wish you would have told me earlier. I would have looked for that video.
I was looking for it for you actually, but I can't seem to get where I saved the link. I was like, it's okay, it's fine. If I get it, I'll share. If I don't, sour. But yeah.
Okay. And even before we share the photos from your wedding, can you just tell us a bit about your wedding day? Not even the planning process, we'll get to that, but your wedding day.
My wedding was really beautiful, and I was the happiest I have been. I honestly was the happiest I have been in a very long time. I look back, actually we were looking at the wedding, at the photos the other day with mom, and she was like, were you happy to leave us, Amma? Because I was genuinely really happy. Like I had an amazing day, stress-free. I was really happy on my wedding, and the photos can tell I was honestly very, very happy. I also look back because it was done. Citizen were there, the wedding show were there. So I look back and I watched the videos, and I really danced, and and it was raining. It was raining, but I had such a good time. I other than when we delayed at the photo shoot area, that's when my husband panicked. I didn't panic, but I had a good day. I honestly had an amazing day. Yeah,
that is so nice to hear, because I think what's left for us is just to see a few photos from your wedding. Please tell me if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
So this is you walking down the aisle with your parents.
Yeah.
My and mom. I can imagine you were a bit.
Actually, I think I was tearing here. I think I was crying here at some point. Yeah, I think I was, because I saw my husband to be there, and I think he was also tearing. So we're both just crying. We're just a mess, both of us. Then
Brian was crying.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. Yeah, he was crying.
Oh,
So
this is a bit.
yeah, yeah.
No,
But I was
Lord, you
happy.
made
I
a
was actually,
right.
thank you. I was genuinely happy on my day, on my big day. I loved my day. Yeah.
So this is part of the reception area,
Mm,
and you went
so
really bold with the black
with
and
the black, which Alfie
Mm.
didn't want. Actually, I'll say my Alfie didn't want that black. I told him we're gonna do a black tent. We're gonna do a black tent, and he took time. You may think it's me. So he took time, and then he later on called me. I was like, Stawa, we'll do black. We'll do a black tent.
Mm.
Which I loved. And other than at the altar, like when I was walking down the aisle, the other time I cried, and I don't think it was captured, was the time I entered the tent and when I saw my vision come to be. That time I cried and I was a mess because it
So
was
this is another
so
area. This is another angle. So
yeah.
so this is when you've gotten married. You've gone for the photo shoot.
So that's the photo shoot. So we did our photo shoot at Karura. Yeah.
Oh, this is a fierce photo. You and your girls.
Thank you. They also wore black.
And I really like.
So everything was
I
really
really like
black.
the
Everything
black
was just,
dresses.
it was black and gold, which was a bold.
Yeah.
So we really, because I took time, I took 2 years to plan the day, or rather, we took 2 years before we got married, or rather, when we started the processes. So slowly, I brought, like I sold the idea of black to my folks, because also, I mean, black with the African parent, it doesn't augur well. So I took a bit of time to tell them, okay, so we started with black outfits for the girls, and then it went to black tent. That one, Alfie and my folks took time, and then everyone was just on board. So yeah.
I like this photo because it just shows that you were really happy. You were having a
I
good
was
time.
really happy, and my gown did not give me stress. If you notice, I literally did my gown testing, or my gown testing with flat shoes, because I told them I have to dance on my wedding day. So we're not testing with heels. We're gonna chop it off, pack up in flats, where the flats can fit. So yeah.
And this
It
is
was a good
Alfred
day.
looking very good.
Yeah, the first time I saw him in a suit, I was so jazzed. Yeah.
This is how Alfred will come to your wedding in a suit, looking
Yeah.
very sharp and whatnot. And this is you and your team.
Yeah, this is
toasting.
toasting. Yeah.
And this is such
We had a
beautiful shoot.
huge bridal party. We had a huge bridal party.
Yes,
Wow.
this is the first dance, I suppose.
Yeah, this is the first dance. These are the things that the fog that you couldn't understand when Alfie was telling us, we'll have fog. We're like, what is fog? It's like, don't worry, you'll see it at the wedding. You'll have fog machines. We're like, oh wow. But yeah, it was really nice. I
that is
enjoyed it.
one of the importance of having professionals, especially wedding planners, because you have never planned a wedding before, so ideally you
No.
would not even know what fog is.
Yeah, I had no idea what fog lights were. I didn't have an idea of what park and lights were and the importance of it. Gosh, there are things that are just like, what are those? Why do we need that? The different types of chairs, like the different, it's just the different types of chairs that, like the lady who made my cake, bless her soul, I had no idea. Like if you asked me, like if I was to just Google, I'd have never gotten cake art. She did such a good job. I loved my cake. So such things, if it wasn't for Alfie, honestly, I wouldn't have known about them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that is wonderful to hear. And just to go back to the conversation we were having earlier about contacting your suppliers. So when did you first contact House of Daughty? When did the conversation start about your wedding?
Our journey started way before wedding planning began. Our journey started way before. So I first knew them as just guys who could supply furniture and do the decor. And then, gosh, we started this journey before the rehearsal, before the engagement. I think maybe just slightly after the introductions. And as I said, I got engaged much later after we started our traditional wedding. So I think when we started our traditional function, that's when we started, but our journey started way before 2019. Yeah, and engagement. So yeah,
if I could chime in, actually, I knew Brenda's mom before I knew Brenda.
Yeah,
yeah.
Alfie knew my mom before.
Yeah. And it was more about just the tent and setting up for your rehearsal. Then through that, I think your mom bumped into us during a wedding in the chance that you're going to do, and she could not believe it. Us. Then through that, we started a friendship with Brenda. And at some point, I remember your mom saying, "Ay, Alfred, mimi ndio nilikuwa rafiki yako." So it was a beautiful journey.
Yeah, and as Doro said, your planner becomes your best friend. I remember when you were finishing this process, I was just like, okay, Alfie, I'm nakurudisha kama bwana ya Dorothy sasa. Because I called Alfie the most, like, I was just like, wow, this is a very deep relationship. Like, like it's because your planner become everything the person you talk to the most during that season. And for me, because I was planning it by myself, my husband was away. So, I mean, if literally we were just doing me and Alfie, then Brian came in and found things set up. And yeah. So your planner is literally, it's you, your husband or fiancé, and then your planner. You're three of you in that relationship. You're getting married. Yeah.
So ideally, after you have gotten married, you have to return him.
Oh yeah. I was just like, sawa, nimemaliza sasa kazi. Yeah.
Oh Lord, that is so. That's something else. But quickly, just because of time, I'd like to continue to the next question. So Alfred, I'd like to come back to you and ask. So once you have contacted these suppliers and you want now to contract them, how does the vetting process take place? What criteria do you normally use as wedding planners to select the wedding suppliers? Maybe you can answer that. And as a follow-up, I'll ask you, what happens if the couple suggests suppliers that you have not worked with before as House of Daughty? So what's the vetting process? What's the selection process? And what happens if a client comes with a different supplier you haven't worked with?
Okay. I think for us over the years, what we've ended up doing is come up with checklists. And checklists are very, very important. And unfortunately for people like us who do quite a couple of weddings in a year, if you're not careful, you can drop the ball. Because the more you do it, the more you think you're good at it, the more complacent you get. So what we've had to do is develop checklists, and part of it is that. And normally what happens is we will be guided by the client's needs, the client design, and what the client wants. That's very key to us. So even as you think about suppliers, that is always the point, okay? Now, we've been lucky over the years, we've been able to develop networks, mostly with a lot of the reputable suppliers who, with or without our recommendation, the suppliers, the couple will actually come and say, I want to work with so and so. But having said that, even when we've worked with you, even if it was a wedding last weekend, this coming weekend is Brenda's wedding. We need to think about this wedding as a new wedding. So the vetting process for us starts from the word go, and it's guided by the needs of the client. And we normally have quite a couple of options for the clients. And sometimes we could be lucky where the client is very particular, mostly in the era of social media now, where they're able to do their research. And by the time they're coming, they already know, Eunice is my planner. So-and-so is my cake person. And for us, it's just follow-up. But we have situations where we need to look at several options. And then based on that, then we can help the client make the decision. If a client comes with a new supplier who we've never worked with, we are more than happy to work with them. But we always like say, your wedding is equally our wedding as well. And whatever decisions you make are our decisions because it's our brand on the line. And we need to be very clear about it. And one of the guarantees that we bring as professionals is the buck will still stop with us. Whether that supplier was brought by you or not, on the wedding day, we will answer and make sure that everything goes according to plan. So normally what happens is we will have the conversations with this supplier, and then we will use our expertise, and then we're able to advise. Now, there's no perfect supplier, even us, we are not. But we have what we call an 80-20 rule. And the 80-20 rule for us is when we have our discussions, 80% do these people seem to work for the kind of wedding we're looking at? If an answer is yes, whether they are, we've brought them, whether the suppliers or the client has brought them, then we're good to go. Another crucial thing for us, which we always use, is we always advise the couple to use their gut feeling, because you can decide House of Daughty are very good as planners, but we do not connect. And if we don't, then there's no need to proceed on with the process. So that to us is very crucial. In a nutshell, that process for us is a very involving process for us and the couple, because they need to be comfortable with the suppliers that we choose for them. And it's not just us ticking the box and saying, these are the people we work with. No, the couple need to be part of the process, and they need to be comfortable with the people we choose with them.
Yeah, I think that's a very comprehensive answer. And so you've answered the two questions that I asked. I like the part you said about the 80-20, and I like the fact that you said, you know, as long as 80% is okay, then you're good to go, because, you know, we are human beings.
We are.
You can never be perfect. Things happen, especially in the events industry.
Yes.
Things happen, and things can change very fast. And I also like the fact that you have said you go with your gut feeling, because sometimes someone would be really good, but when you don't gel, your spirits don't gel, then perhaps the work experience would not be really smooth and whatnot. So that's also a very important aspect of it, going with your gut feeling. So when you have contracted these suppliers, and just to go with the example of the December wedding, it's January, the first quarter of the year, you have contracted the suppliers. So how often do you contact these suppliers? You know, the wedding is so far in December. Is there some points where everything is so quiet? How is that communication like? How often do you contact these suppliers?
I think Dorothy
Dorothy?
can answer.
Yes, Dorothy can answer.
Okay, so of course, the initial process, the first quarter and probably second quarter, there's a lot of back and forth, because we've met the vendors, we've decided we are if it's a decorator, we are getting 3 different quotes, then we settle on one person who we think will meets our style, concepts, and budgets. Now, this person we have picked, after they send us their quotes, they've sent us their mood board, they've sent us what they've decided to do for us. The next step is we sign the contract, and then we give them a deposit. Now, having done that, to be honest, we may not need to keep talking to the decorator for quite a while. There might be a lull there. However, sometimes a client may be like, oh, I saw this idea on Pinterest, or I saw this wedding that was on TV that I really liked. What do you think of it? Fine. The good thing is you have us as the planner, so we are able to, where necessary, come in between and talk. But most of the time, I like to say, once decisions are made early, you get to relax, get to now just enjoy your process. Now, either start finding ways to look for money, or either start looking for start doing other things. Remember, in between a 1 year, there's probably ngurario, rorashios, and those other traditional aspects of getting married as well. So at some point, if you've settled, you've done the wedding bit and we have all our vendors in place, maybe concentrate on that part first. So we don't need to keep talking to people all the time. Your planner, you definitely need to speak to them frequently just to catch up. But for these other vendors, it will not be necessary even. But towards the end, of course, we have mock setups, if it's deco, cake tasting. Okay, sometimes we do cake tasting earlier because sometimes we won't settle on a vendor if we've not done cake tasting. But some clients of ours have come from abroad. They've never done the cake tasting. They just liked the vendor maybe for cake due to the designs they do, due to budgets, due to what we have recommended as well. But they want to come now and do cake tasting. So that's fine. If you're a last minute or somebody who's coming into Kenya last minute, we also sometimes end up having to do like what I like to say, it's like a speed test towards the wedding, because sometimes these guys from diaspora can only land a week to the wedding. So we have to do like a quick going through vendors at the last minute. But of course, there comes a time when there's a lull especially if you've made your decisions early. So concentrate on other things whereby it's like Ruracio, Gurario, if you have not done your dresses or those kinds of things. There's some things which you can actually concentrate on because you have all your wedding vendors in place. Again, there's pastors, there's like 10, 12 weeks, sometimes, what we call marriage, premarital counseling, and these are part of your vendors, for lack of a better word. When we were getting married, Alfred was not able to be here full time, so we had to go to professional marriage counselors and not necessarily church. And we had to work with his schedule when he was around. So there are a lot of clients who are like that because they're not able maybe to do the premarital counseling recommended by most churches. Maybe they'll have to get professional. So those continue as we move along. Yeah, I don't know if I've answered your question, Eunice.
I think you have answered my question very at length. I just want to go back to Brenda. Brenda, many couples who are starting to plan their weddings, they're probably wondering how their wedding planning process looks like when they have a planner in the picture. Your wedding was planned by one of the best wedding and events planners in Kenya. So how would you describe your experience working with planners, in relation to key wedding suppliers? We're talking about key wedding suppliers, and you had planners who planned your wedding. How did you relate with these suppliers, and how was it working with planners?
Eunice, mine was really, really seamless. Mine was, kesho tunaenda kwa, we're going to see the other person, so we're going to see this other person. Other than, I think, my gown, because I know the owner of Ellen's. The rest, I was given once we signed the contract. As Doro said, we were given a timeline of what was needed to be done by first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and that's what we followed. So mine was, if it's venues, so they did the work. They came up with the venues. I was told Wednesdays. I think our meeting days were Wednesdays. I think so. Yeah. So this Wednesday, we're going to Limuru Road. Okay. And the next Wednesday, we're going to Kiambu Road. Okay. The next, mine was so, like, it was worth every shilling. Like, it was really, really, and speaking from a place where I was doing it by myself, majority of the work, I genuinely didn't have a hard time. They came through a big one for me, and it was, because that's, of course, as also Alfia said, there's some vendors you probably do not connect, and you with your planner, you're very frank, and you'll be like, I don't think we really connected with them. So is there another option? You're like, yeah, okay, there's another option. So I think there's one of the vendors, which I won't mention which one, we didn't, and because of budget, we were unable to agree, and that's when I was given, like, I was told, okay, fine. That's when I went out and looked for options, and then I'd be like, okay, so I've gotten these guys, what do you guys think? So I'd ask, like, Akinati, what do you guys think of this vendor XYZ? They're like, okay, we can try them, let's go, let's have a meeting, we hear what they have to say, But other than that, honestly, it was very seamless. And having that timeline thing also really helped me. So I was able, because I had in my lineup, I had guys from South Africa as well. So I was able also to sort out my girls in good time. So I knew when their dresses should be ready, when suits should be ready. And I had my gown by March. Yeah, for October wedding. I had my girls' dresses by August. Yeah, for October. So the timelines really, like, I mean, I wouldn't have known what to do, when to do them, when not to do them. And then for him as well, to do his planning, like, when does he need to be here for us to go to AG, to figure out Sharia and stuff like that. So mine was really, I was just there. Mine was to be available, which I was. So yeah, mine was seamless, Eunice.
Oh Lord, I think that's very nice to hear. Alfred and Dorothy, I can imagine. Raving review.
Really happy to hear that, Brenda. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Alfred, I just want to go back to you and we have seen for a wedding to happen, there have to be a lot of suppliers involved. And so when there's so many suppliers, there's so many moving parts, there's a lot of information. So I'm just wondering, for a bride who is going through this wedding planning process, and I thank God because Brenda is here, how does a couple, not even just a bride, a couple, how do they keep sane amid all these moving parts? What can they do, or what do you normally advise them to do so that they do not get overwhelmed? Because remember, this is the very first time they're planning a wedding.
Yeah.
There's so many people involved. There's also that pressure, you don't know what there's just this pressure, you're getting married, it's a big day, everyone is focused on you, and then you also have all these people. So how does a couple keep sane, and what do you normally advise them so that they do not get overwhelmed?
Two key things for me. Number one, trust. Number two, healthy relationship. And I'll explain.
Okay.
So what a lot of us do, you only trust that we'll actually deliver on the wedding day. And you have to trust. It's the only way. But the only way for you to trust, especially for people like us as a wedding planner, is to make sure that we have a healthy relationship. I always say we have to be friends. I still continue with that. We don't have to be BFFs that you're drinking every weekend together, but let's be friends. Friends, or we can reach out and you can fill me on the good, the bad, and the ugly about your wedding. And it's through that I'm able to make sure that, look, this is the direction we need to take, and you need to trust me to do that. And once you have those two, everything else comes into play, because you will be able to trust that whatever I'm doing, it's for your best interest. And even for me, because we have mutual trust, I'm able to trust that you will do your end of the bargain. Because remember, we also have a relationship to protect with our suppliers. So when you have that, imagine everything else goes well. The other crucial thing is what Dorothy said, decision making. We're not miracle workers. And we like saying, we will help give you all these options, but the ultimate decision is your decision as a couple. You need to be very decisive. You'd rather make the wrong decision, but let's make a decision. Once you do, then everything else goes into play. So those to me are very crucial. And once you put that together, you'll have a wonderful time, not necessarily only on your wedding day, but the process leading to the wedding day.
Okay. Yeah. And just to go back to Brenda, I think I'm really not, maybe you should just make it a bit clearer. Okay. When you're working with House of Daughty, to what extent did you work with them in regards to your wedding? What were they in charge of?
Everything. Except my God. Everything. They're in charge of my parents, my in-laws, myself, Brian. As you said, it's even when you have a planner, it's the stress even between the two of you it can also be very frictional between the two of you. And they came in even before the day, they came in to just help manage expectations from both families on days that we couldn't agree. Me and my folks, me and my in-laws, my partner and my folks, they came in, they were a good balance to, be like, hi mom, so in the industry things look like this, but they honestly they were in charge of every single, I'm trying to think of anything they were not. Food, photography,
did you say your dress?
Everything.
Your dress was the only
it's just my dress. Yeah, it's just my dress, because that one I had direct connection with the owner, and I was able to negotiate as family. But other than that, and maybe the suits and the dresses for the girls and the gents, but everything else they really took care of it. And it was just for us to approve, have a meeting with the vendor, approve, and then I hand them over to them. I do my payments, and then they take care of the rest, honestly. Yeah. And if they didn't, Brian will correct me if they didn't take care of anything, but they honestly did take care of everything.
Okay. Yeah. So Dorothy, we have heard that you took care of everything. And this means you took care of all the vendors. But sometimes, things just happen out of, you don't have control of everything. So what happens when one of your suppliers just falls through last minute? What happens?
So I have to say, as House of Daughty, we are blessed, and I don't know if I can say lucky, that in the years we've been in business, we've had very good, well, there's been a few things like after the wedding, the photographer maybe does not deliver photographs on time and things like that. But I'll have to say that we've had God has really blessed us. We've been very lucky. However, I would like to say we had a situation just when we were startup, there was no social media then, and thank God for that, because I think right now anything is put out there on social media if somebody messes up. But we had a situation whereby an entertainer sent Alfred money back, I think on Friday when the wedding is Saturday. And he said he can't come. Yeah. I think he had got a better gig. And that for us was so Alfred didn't get in touch with the, of course, bride, because brides most of the time would panic, but he did get in touch, I think, with the groom and say this is the situation. But by the time he was getting in touch with the groom, we already had a solution. And this is why I say it's I always tell upcoming wedding planners and all that, it's good to have good relationships across the board with so many people, such that if something happens, you can easily give someone a call and say, hey, I've been messed up here. And also an MC. We had an MC who also
confused.
I don't know. Confused it. But even there's another one who last minute changed, and we got an MC very quickly. Like if you have good relationships over the years with people, you can even easily call them last minute, even without money, and they will come. And you'll tell them, let's sort each other later, but for now, I need you tomorrow. So I always say, we over time, we thank God, we've created great relationships of people who've come through for us last minute when we needed help. We've not had a crazy experience where we totally didn't have a show. It's the day and we don't know what to do most. I would have to say the ones that, like that entertainer who didn't turn up, we called a certain group and they came through for us. I know we are not supposed to advertise here, but they came through for us last minute, and we've had 2 MCs, DJ who confused the day. We were able to get quick response, and we had an MC who I guess also got a better gig or something, and we managed to get an MC within a very short time. So I thank God over the time, the relationships we've created have really helped us.
I think just to add on that, I think that's where you really feel the value of a wedding planner. Because the wedding planner is able to fill in those gaps. You may not know, or you would know, but the simple thing is the guests don't know. So the wedding will run. I always say we'll have the fight after the wedding. Why did I not do my favorite DJ? Then now we can tell you this and this happened. So when you have a planner, they fill in those gaps for you, and they make sure that the wedding flows and runs. And then now the fights can happen afterwards. So I imagine that was the money being returned to the client directly, and it's the night before the wedding. It would really be a bad day for the client. So I feel that's part of what the planner brings to the table.
I'd like to add on that as well.
Okay.
Just a bit. Luckily for me, my planner was also the person giving me furniture. But like for our day, we had planned for 700 or 1,000, and those numbers almost doubled. 700. On the day. Like they were really, and I think later on when I was looking at the photos, I was like, I don't think I asked for that chair, for that type of chair, but I saw it on the photos. I was like, Akina Alfie actually came through. So they figured out how everyone will sit. There are some, of course, people who didn't sit like inside like the main A-frame, but they were like, one of the quick decisions that they made was the 4 o'clock tea and mandazi, let it be given to people who had sat outside so that they feel like they were also wanted and part of the wedding and whatnot, because the rest are inside and they're having the main show and whatnot. So a planner quickly, because I can't imagine if someone came and told me kona watu wengi sana na hatuna viti, I don't know what I'd have done if that happened. And yes.
You've answered my question, because I was going to ask you, how would you compare this experience with someone who does not have a wedding planner? And you've just painted a very good picture, because imagine that money was being returned to the bride the day before the wedding.
Yeah. Mine was so simple. I don't even know what. You know what? For me, what I got, the message I got the night before was just at 3 a.m. Was, "Hi Brenda and Brian, enjoy your day. We got
Oh.
this from House of
Oh.
Daughty." And that just, because I was waking up, I think an hour or two after that, and that made my, like, from the, so now even with friends, I actually text them at 3 a.m. to tell them, because I remember that made me smile. Before I could hand over the phone to my best mate, I was like, that was the last and first message I read of the day.
I think Alfred, you're a night owl, because yesterday you texted me at 4:40 a.m.
He is. He functions better. He functions better between 3 and 6 in the morning.
He really is. He really is.
He functions better at that time when the whole world is quiet.
Yeah. Well, but we are just almost winding up. But we cannot wind up before talking about this period that we are in. We're in the pandemic season, and I think a lot of things has changed. So I just like to ask Alfred. Many couples are really concerned about postponements in case of lockdown. In case tomorrow Uhuru wakes up and say, guys, we're going to lock the country again. Cancellations, refund policies. How do you handle this on behalf of your client? And how do you, what can you tell someone who is concerned about all these things that are happening during the pandemic, especially in relation to working with other key suppliers?
To be honest, it's been tough. It's really, really tough. But the one thing that I've learned is, unlike before, where a lot of our guiding principles were contracts, right now it's about relationships and humanity. And this is where we come in strongly as the wedding planner, because you're the key. You're the in between the client and your suppliers, and you need to balance both. Because remember, as a supplier, somebody, you booked me. Yes, it might be canceled, but remember, I can't take any other wedding. So what happens to me? It's loss of business. But yet here we are. I'm being guided as a couple by the government regulations. We had planned for 300. I made a deposit for 300 people. But the government tells me I can only do 30 people. Then what happens to my deposit? So I feel it's a lot of humanity. And we've been very lucky, because one of the key things is, remember, as wedding planners, in as much as the supplier has allegiance to you, they also have a bigger allegiance to me as your wedding planner, because their next wedding comes from mine. What I recommend. So that is what we really held on. And we are seeing a lot of people, based on that experience or based on a relationship, be able to twist their contracts to say, look, I normally ask for 50%, but I understand we do not know. Like right now, the current situation we're dealing with is couples coming from the UK. It's a big, big problem because they can't come, and we're planned and we're finalized, So we're having those, and a lot of our relationships, we are able now to sit down with each particular supplier, and each is very different, and be able to say, you normally ask for 50% deposit. Can we do 20%? And when we have a clear way forward towards the wedding, we can top up, because we're not sure about the numbers. So it's a lot of that, and just a lot of talking and being there for the clients and just listen, because it's very uncharted waters. And the pressure is not necessarily just for the couple alone. They also have their families. Numbers, we plan for 300, now it's 30. What happens? So we're using that a lot just to try and move ahead. And a lot of suppliers are really coming, they're really coming through, a lot of our suppliers, and being able to understand what the couple is going through and balance the two. I'll give you a very good example. We've had situations where the numbers have really dipped, or a wedding has been canceled totally. We have that situation. Somebody had already been paid, but unfortunately they can't refund. We've had situations where we said, fine, we'll get you another wedding. And when we get you the other wedding, please give us back that money. Then I can return it to this couple. And that way we are able to have a win-win situation for everyone. Yeah. So that's what we're really relying on. Relationships.
But Eunice, just like we've mentioned, this is new territory for us. So I'm also urging even my fellow vendors, let's be a bit more understanding, and of course now balance with the suppliers, because if we are very strict with our contract, there's tomorrow, and tomorrow things will go back smoothly. and you will need us, and you will need the same vendors, or the same clients. So let's try and just have some humanity in us, because at the end of the day, this is something new to everyone.
I think someone in the chat box asked a similar question to mine, what I've just asked right now in regards to COVID. And so Dorcas Nduma was asking, she said, "Hi, thanks for the webinar. I'm Dorcas and I wanted to find out, with the uncertainties of COVID, what happens when you have paid the vendors' deposits and lockdown measures come in, which limits the numbers all of a sudden?" And I think you have answered that at length. We are just coming to the end of this webinar, and I'd like to end with Brenda before we go into the questions, and just invite anybody who has a question. This is your last call. Anybody who has a question for House of Daughty, for Brenda, just leave your question at the chat box. But Brenda, a lot of people are planning their weddings, a lot of brides, a lot of grooms, but because you were a bride, what would you advise someone who is in that process of planning their wedding based on your experience?
And honestly, I'm an accountant, so the first thing that came to my mind was figures. Have a budget. If you can, have a working budget, so that then that you can work backwards. You're not asking for a 10 million florists when your budget is 1M, you know. So if you can have a working budget, that would be really, really nice. And then have ideas. You probably don't have to work with a 10M florist, but you can somehow figure out how to work around with someone cheaper and realize your dream. So have a mood board. Start early. Start everything early, and especially if you're importing things. And with this, I mean, even then, back in 2019, things took very long. So I can imagine now with it. Sorry. I think you lost me. So I was saying, if you can start. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So start early. If you can know your lineup early enough, if you can have ideas of people who will do your dresses early enough, makeup early enough, you know, just start everything. You'd rather be chilling in fourth quarter and doing your final payments than start running around. And if you can and you have the budget, honestly, involve a planner. That was one of the best decisions. And if nothing else, planners come through even for, and as I said, I'm an accountant, things were really discounted. So I kept on calling, like, House of Daughty, can we get a further 20K off that cost, you know? And yeah, it happened. I mean, because of the relations that they have. And in so many, when I think about it, we saved quite a lot in so many areas. So if you can afford a planner, it will be really, really nice. Comes in very, very handy. Yeah. So I think that's off my top of my mind. I think I'd think of those 4.
Okay. We lost Brenda there. But I'd just like to invite Alfred and Dorothy to prepare your final remarks even as we close. But before we do that, I'd like to go to the chat box and just
Sorry. I was saying those are the 4 that I can think about right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brenda. I was saying, Dorothy and Alfred, kindly prepare your final remarks even as we close. But I want to read a few comments from the section, and we have, I think, 1 or 2 more questions. We were joined by Isaac Warambo. DJ Stretch is in the building. There's someone here who said, great to join you guys and seeing my friends Alfred and Dorothy. I'm not sure who said that. Derek said, this is an awesome panel. Super happy to be learning from House of Daughty. they were a huge blessing during my cousin's wedding, Judy and Andrew. I don't know if you remember.
Yes, of course. Of
Yeah,
course.
we remember them, we remember.
Yes. There was Janet who had put in that question about time frame, and I think that was answered in length. There was Dorcas who put in that question about the uncertainties that has come with the pandemic, which was also answered. And this is Brian. I think Brian is your husband. Brian,
Yeah.
yeah.
He just wanted
Yeah.
me to be more
So yeah,
detailed
he said
about
be
the
very
engagement.
elaborate.
Yeah, that was on the engagement. But it's okay.
Yeah. Yes. Joe and Jega says say hi to them. Joe and Jega? Who knows Joe?
Yes.
Oh, a friend of Alfred.
Yeah, I know Joe.
Yes. He says hi.
I too.
Yes, and yes. Derek asks. Derek had a question for House of Daughty. He says, "Can I be an effective event organizer with an 8 to 5? Also, what's the best advice you can offer me as someone getting into the business?"
I could answer that. Yes, you can. You can. I think we ran House of Daughty as a side hustle for the first 6 years. I actually fired my boss 4 years ago to get my new boss. But all through, we've been doing it and I was working. So it's just a matter of how you plan and how much you want it. If you're in it for the money, you'll be disappointed. If you're in it because you love it, you will have a breathe because it involves a lot of people. For me, the number one advice I would give to anyone who wants to come in, it's just to perfect your interpersonal skills. That has really helped us. How you relate with not just your couples, but everyone else around in that. That has been our greatest advantage. And the third one is look for somebody who tells you as it is. I'm so lucky to have my lovely with my partner, and she tells me when I'm naked. You know, when I'm not doing the right thing. And there's nothing as good as somebody who generally tells you this one, because sometimes it gets so hard, especially you're carrying the load of the bride, the families and everything. And sometimes you can doubt yourself. Just somebody coming to tell you, yes, that's the right decision. That has really helped in everything that we are doing.
Maybe I can add, if you're working 8 to 5, it just means you can't take up so much. Exactly. Because I remember when Alfred was in full-time employment, we couldn't take up so much within over time, we've been able to do much more per month than when Alfred was employed and when I was still, the business was still young and we hadn't put systems in place. So if initially you still want to keep your 8 to 5 job, which I would suggest keep it until you have a business that's flowing very well. Maybe you can just manage one wedding a month, or instead don't take too much because it's going to burn you out. You're going to spoil your full-time employment and you're going to also mess your clients. So just start small and do maybe 1 a month or 2 a month, depending on the kind of job you have. Again, you only know, and if you have anybody else who can help you with that, with the planning process as well.
Derek, I hope that has answered your question at length. Angela Wamai on YouTube, she says, Brenda's wedding was one for the books. Great job, House of Daughty. And she puts on that clapping emoji. And she says, I'm looking forward to starting the journey.
Wow.
That's Angela Wamai on YouTube. And Dorcas Nduma, she's asking for your contacts, House of Daughty. So, yes, she's asking for your contacts. So I don't know how you can direct her with that.
I think the easiest is our socials, straight up House of Daughty. On Instagram is house_of_Daughty. But she can reach out to, I think you can share with her our numbers, any of our numbers, then she can get it from there. But we're on social media. She can definitely get us on social media.
Okay, and you reply to your DMs?
Yes, we do. We try to.
No.
Or we do.
Okay. I think we've gotten a last question that has come in. Yeah, Janice Davids, she says, Alfred and Dorothy, she has two questions. Number one, what would be the average cost approximately of a wedding planner? And number two, what is the average wedding spend on champagne? Oh, there's a third question. Who's made your lovely shirts, please?
Oh, I can take hats. One, cost of wedding planner. It's very dependent. Different wedding planners have different ways of costing. Some planners will cost as a percentage of your budget. Some planners will have a flat fee, like we have a flat fee for us. And it's also dependent on the on your experience. The very first wedding we ever got paid, I think we were paid 20,000 shillings, and we're the happiest people on earth. But over the years, we've been able to build a brand to where we are. So there's no one shoe fits all. It also depends on what exactly do you want the planner to do. The people who want the planner to be involved through and through. The people who say, I only need you to come at a certain time. So it's very dependent on all those factors. That's number one. Number two, cost of a wedding still depends on you. It does not need to be very expensive for it to be good. But the first thing professionals like us do is to give you a cost projection. It's important for you to have an idea of what you're getting yourself into before you even start the journey. So there's no cost. Costs are all dependent on what you want and what we feel will be best for your wedding. So that's also very, very variant, and you can't have one shoe fit all. The last one was, remind me, I think.
What was the last one, Eunice? I missed that.
Actually, there's two questions. What is the average wedding spend on champagne? She asked champagne.
Champagne means a high-end wedding. That's what she means. Champagne means high-end wedding. Does champagne
really? I did not know that. I didn't know that.
Yes.
Oh,
so that's what she means. Champagne means a high-end wedding. And maybe what I can add to what Alfred has said, and then numbers determine. You can have a 50 packs wedding and you're spending 1 million. That would be a champagne wedding because the numbers are less. But you can have a 1 million, even you can have a 3-4 million wedding. But if your guests are 3, 4, 500, it may not be a champagne wedding. So it a lot determines how much a wedding will cost on average.
Okay. So she adds, in your experience, what do couples spend on champagne?
Champagne itself?
I'm not really sure what she means by champagne. Is it like what Dorothy has explained? Because
I'm wondering if she means champagne wedding is a high-end wedding or just actual champagne.
I think the bottom line is every wedding is different and no one wedding will be the same as the other. And that is across the board in terms of spend. We've had weddings which are very, very good, but low budget. We have weddings which are very expensive, but they were not as good. I think the bottom line is, one, do a wedding within your means. Two, enjoy your wedding. It doesn't matter. People, what they take away was not how expensive it was, but how good you looked and felt at the wedding, the experience. That's it. That's what you need to concentrate. As long as it's within what you can do and you can afford, that's it. Oh, our lovely shirt, we made by a company called Zarova.
Zarova.
Z-A-R-O-V-A. They're also the ones who've branded our office as well.
Yeah. And they do most of our branding for our events.
Yes. And thank you for the compliment.
Asante. Let me see if she's added anything. Oh, yeah, she says great answers, Asante Sana.
Oh.
Yes. There's also someone, Derek says, thank you guys so much. Huge shout out to Brenda. Brenda is an awesome service provider. I think you know Derek, and thank you for hosting. Thank you so much. Now, we are 30 minutes past time, and I'd just like to invite Dorothy and Alfred to just give us the final remarks. And Catherine, if you're available too, as we close.
Maybe I can start by saying
Yeah.
Maybe I can start by saying thank you very much, Eunice and the Samantha Bridal Group, for having us this evening to share a bit of what we know about the wedding industry. And also thank Brenda for accepting to be here. And, you know, all the props and everybody listening. To a bridegroom to be, because, you know, we are here because of weddings specifically. Have fun, enjoy the process, work with what you can afford. You know, and if possible, hire a wedding planner because they're able to guide you correctly. To my fellow vendors, like we talked about during this very crucial time, COVID, I know it's been hard, but let's try to be a bit more human and understanding in the process, especially now with things just being left up in the air, cancellations, you know, things happening. Let's try and be human as much as we have of contracts and all that. Thank you.
Wow, I think I can't top that. I think she summed it up. I think the bottom line for me is whatever it is, a wedding is like an exam. You know, you're never ready until it happens. Trust the process, trust the suppliers, put everything before your greater being. And most important, on the wedding day, enjoy it. It does not matter. Enjoy it. That's what people will remember. And that's what people take home. And that has been our journey. And one of the things that we like saying, and I know DJ Stretch is watching, he likes saying, irrespective of everything, we will enjoy the wedding. Whether you enjoy it or you don't, for us as the suppliers, it's a journey and that's the culmination of the journey. You have no choice but to enjoy it and let it be. And the guests, that's what they take home. Thank you very much, Renee. This was so wonderful. Thank you, Brenda, for being here and just for propping up.
Yeah.
We are happy that you're still our friend all these years down the line.
I like what you have said, you know, about enjoying the wedding, because I can imagine you've spent so much time planning, and the best thing you can do for yourself and for everyone involved is just to, you know, have fun. And I mean, it's your day. And it does not really matter. You have to have fun. So I really want to thank all of you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much, House of Daughty, for joining us, for sharing your insights, for answering all these questions that have been asked at length. You have been very educative. You have been very forthcoming with your answers. And I just want to say thank you so much. I want to say thank you to Brenda for joining us too, and for sharing your experience. And, you know, it's not every day that you get people who are willing to, you know, put their photos out there and to talk about their journey. So we don't really take it for granted at all. So thank you so very much. Catherine, are you there for your final remarks? Janet says, thank you guys. It's always refreshing to see professionals. Yes. I'm not sure where Catherine is, but she usually listens in. Let me try and see. Because it would be really nice to just have her say one last thing before we close. Just give me 1 second. I hear where she is.
It's actually 8:30. You're having it.
I think we, because Catherine is the host, ideally she's supposed to end the meeting, but I think we should